If you became president, would you pardon Edward Snowden?
I would pardon, but only because he went through all the proper channels and was rejected.
Right.
The Democrats demonized the Republicans demonized the Democrats. First of all, you can't unite the country if you're demonizing half the people.
Yep.
And so everyone knows the origins of COVID and all. I mean, we can stop with the games.
Yep.
The Donald Trump of 2023 is not the Donald Trump of 2016. He is a different man. He's bitter. DeSantis, I think, is good at policy. As it relates to the presidential race, he's very inauthentic.
Well, the boots also kind of
like I said, inauthentic. American citizens, still half of them don't know that the government's lying to them about everything.
So are we the bad guy?
Around the world, we are the bad guy that no one wants to talk about. They can't stand up to us yet.
I think a lot of people are starting to ask the question, okay, federal government, that's your job to protect the borders. If you're not doing that, why am I paying you so much in taxes? Do you believe in like age limits?
The White House was never meant to be a community retirement home.
If you become president, are you gonna reveal the fact, are there aliens? Are there not? What's up with Area 51 and why is the government talking about freaking aliens?
And our hoverboards related.
And our hoverboards related.
Where do you think I got the idea? No, just kidding. If we knew the truth, many people would shut down.
Hey everyone, welcome back. On today's show, we have the great honor of sitting down with U.S. presidential candidate, Dr. Rollan Roberts II. Dr. Roberts is the former CEO of the Hoverboard company, and he's been in executive leadership in several other organizations. He's done extensive work throughout the continent of Africa on behalf of the U.S. government. He's worked with foreign leaders of many nations, and he's seen the best and the worst of how the U.S. government treats its allies and its enemies. He's an accomplished author, having written several books, and now he's set his sights on the 2024 U.S. presidency. We're going to cover a lot of topics in today's discussion, everything from foreign policy to national defense, Africa, immigration, AI, education, and a whole lot more. We think you're going to find this very interesting, and we're excited to bring it to you. If you haven't noticed, we're a little unofficial.
Yeah, but you know how to pull it together. That's what I have seen. You know how to pull it together.
Good. I just want to say right off the bat, thank you. This is really cool. I know you're a busy guy, so just letting us chill with you, hang out.
Twice, in fact. We had dinner last night.
I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
So, last night we had dinner. I expected to sit down, just chill with you for 5 minutes, get to know you, eat some dinner, and be on our way. We started having a blast. Like, I felt like by an hour in, like that we'd known each other for a while, and you're way more entertaining, and you got a lot of information. So today we're going to go over a few things that we talked about last night. Some of the stuff we can talk about, and then some of the stuff we can't talk about, and we know it, but you don't know it. So right off the bat, I would like to talk about AI, term limits, U.S. borders. Should we have or ban TikTok, Israel, Gaza? I even want to talk about African entrepreneurship. And most importantly, why are you running for president?
Yeah, it's interesting because I used to think that you had to be crazy or corrupt to run for president. And that's after I've worked with presidents. And that was my conclusion. And I never wanted to be in politics. I ran for state senate in 2012 just as an outflow of marketing and running companies to see if I could, to see if that translated. But after I experienced that, I thought, I want nothing to do with politics. I never want to run another campaign again. But then I discovered a third C, and that is if you're called. And so that is why I'm running for president. Ultimately, when I look around, there was real impetuses for me to run for president. Number one, I was on a U.S. delegation in South Sudan for the last several years, and in August of 2022, we were there, and my eyes were just further enlightened over and over and over again how corrupt much of what we do around the world is. So I found that if we're sitting at a table with governments, we're cutting their legs off underneath the table. And then because they are not as refined or finessed in how they retaliate and respond, they reach across the table, slap us, and then we act like we're the victims. And then that authorizes us to then do whatever we were wanting to do originally to them. And I found myself in a situation that I could no longer, in good faith, represent the United States of America. I thought I was safe in representing the ideals of America, until it got to where I saw too much. I saw the corrupt things that we were doing, and it came to where I either had to be completely out. I could not, it's not enough just not to run for politics. You couldn't even represent the United States as a whole unless something changed. Several months later, it became very clear that God wanted me to run for president, that this was what I was supposed to do with my life at this time. Mm-hmm. It's not what I would have done strategically. It's not the time that I would have chosen strategically, mm-hmm. but it is for such a time as this. Mm-hmm. And so I know that he has prepared me in a unique way. And it's actually exciting because just like I got to the point where morally, ethically, I could not in good faith represent and stand for that. And so instead of violating my conscience, this is the outlet that he laid and has allowed me to run for president.
Now, you say, God, I feel like a lot of people are closet Christians.
Yeah.
And they just say, yes, I'm a Christian, but they would not dare say that God called me to do something. Talk a little bit about like your faith, because you don't hide it at all.
No, but it's because he has me lock, stock, and barrel. That's why. I'm not doing this for myself. I can't do it for myself. He bought me with a price, and that was his son on the cross. And so when I gave him my life, and I'm so grateful. It wasn't anything I did. He got my attention. September of 2015. And when he got me lock, stock, and barrel. He got everything. And it didn't matter if I ever did or accomplished anything ever again. I just wanted that relationship with him and to please him and to obey him. And so that's why my faith is more important to me than everything. And then my family. And in fact, I can live my faith best when I'm honoring my wife and when I'm raising my son in the nurture and admonition of the Lord and according to, biblical precepts. And so my whole life revolves around that. I'm not out trying to make everybody in the world believe what I believe.
That's what I was about to ask.
Yeah, I'm not trying to be the pastor for the United States of America or anything like that. But what we do know is that righteousness exalts a nation, and blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. So we have to acknowledge God in America if we want America to be blessed. It has nothing to do with who you choose to believe or what you choose to believe or if you choose to believe at all. Your family will be more prosperous. There will be more peace in your family. Your wayward children may not be wayward just because the president, who you did not previously know or have not known the current one, is doing what they're supposed to do in the Oval Office. Most Americans do not correlate those two things, that my quality of life directly relates to the President of the United States, who's in power.
But do you feel like when a lot of people say this is not a Christian nation, we were not founded on those principles, what's your opinion upon that?
Well, you can rewrite history all you want, but the vast majority of the founding documents, not just the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, in their writings, in their letters to one another, even the ones that the secular world would hold up and say they weren't believers, even which was only like 3 or 4 out of the many that they still acknowledged God, and they still believed that a society that was built as a constitutional republic on free enterprise principles, it was only good for a moral society. That the Bible, all of the principles in our free society came from the Bible. And so even the unbelievers recognized the value of that and demanded that it be the primary textbook in schools. And these were people who were not professing Christians, but they recognized the value of the wisdom.
Well, there's a lot of good, like, just moral guidelines in the Bible that even if you're not a Christian and you don't believe, if you follow those, society's better.
Right.
So I feel like, when you're saying that you're not going to be a pastor for all, you want to be a president and you happen to be a Christian and you want to go off those values. So do you feel like people would feel alienated, like with you being a quote Christian? Or
I think they'll feel comfortable that because I don't push anything on anyone. What they take comfort in is that they know that behind closed doors I will do what is right. That's where the faith is. They're so used to people proselytizing them that live the opposite of what they're professing. But I think with me, my prayer is that they can sense, and our spirit bears witness, that they can trust that I will be doing what is right before God behind closed doors. As it relates to American citizens, not lying to Americans. So what does that? Yeah, what does that look like? It's not lying to the American public, which is what we're used to being lied to on a near daily basis in the United States about everything. And then it means doing right by other people and other nations on earth.
Well, I feel like a lot of people they fear the law, but I trust a man who fears God. Even if, like, I say I don't believe in their God.
Right.
Like a Buddhist, someone who's a Muslim, if they fear God, they're going to be honest.
But yeah, exactly to your point. In business, for example, if someone followed whatever their faith was, I have more confidence that they're not going to screw me over because they may not even be afraid of the judicial system or of a lawsuit, but they have to answer. Right. They feel accountable to a higher power. And that constrains them, not so much the law or any potential retribution.
So let's say you get into presidency. Corruption is so bad. The money is so bad. You know, we got people like Nancy Pelosi goes in, she makes like $170,000 a year, and somehow she's worth $200-some million. I feel like insider trading is awful.
Right.
You know, people who know a bill is about to pass and then they go short the stock before. Right. It's not illegal, really. I mean, but at the end of the day, it feels like insider trading. How do you fight against that?
Well, it is a character problem and it's unethical. I hardly blame, I do blame them, but they are not the sole ones to blame. The people who keep putting them in power, they're just a mirror of the rest of America. If America did not have a character problem, if we did not have a national character problem, we would not have people in office with character problems because we would see through them. But we don't. We keep listening to the rhetoric and just blindly say, okay, well, you've got your flaws, I've got mine. Here's what I will say, though, about the people who enrich themselves in public office, because that's a hot topic, obviously, today. But I also think there's some misunderstanding with it. Most of them are doing it the wrong way. They know something's coming down the pike, and so they adjust accordingly. And even if we pass laws and say, okay, you, Mr. Congressman or Miss Congresswoman, you are not allowed to trade individual stocks. You can, invest in the S&P so that the market, generally speaking, which actually incentivizes you to make better laws that help the economy, but not individual stocks, because you know which companies are going to get the government contracts and which ones are going to be dropping in revenue. So you can't do that. Even if you put that limitation on them, they're going to open up brokerage accounts in their children's name, their grandchildren, and their friends, and work out all kinds of deals. It's still going to get done. In fact, that drives the corruption more underground. That's what happens in a lot of the foreign countries. Okay. So when you start looking at what is the solution is to have people of character in office, because there's always a workaround.
So I do want to come back to your experiences with foreign countries. We know that you've led several companies. You've had kind of your faith journey. It would be good to just hear that background. If you could.
Yeah, I can tell you, obviously been in business with most of my adult life, a multi-billion-dollar publicly traded company, and then have been in startups as well, and started my own and sold.
And CEO levels in these organizations.
Technology companies, manufacturing, software as a service.
Hoverboard, right?
And the Hoverboard company, that was obviously a tangible product.
Absolutely. Well, I've slipped and fell on many of those, so that's your fault.
And they were catching fire. I'd be on a phone call with someone and they'd be like, I'm going to go, I've got some fires I got to put out. I said, don't even talk to me about fires. I can tell you all about actual fires.
Wow. Well, there were so many ripoffs.
That's what it was. It was all knockoffs. I mean, over 800 Chinese manufacturers knocking off the Hoverboard. And
you were CEO during that time, like having to deal with all that?
Yeah. And, it's probably over $1 billion of loss, with that. There were two things that we did that were, I thought, really helpful at the end of that, which was bringing 20 Chinese manufacturing companies who were knocking it off together and working a deal, because the Chinese wanted to rip off the Americans. But if I authorized Chinese, then it would eliminate 780 of the other companies. So the Chinese didn't want to rip off the Chinese. They just wanted to rip us. Oh. And so by making that alliance, that helped a lot. And then I also learned a very valuable lesson. If you have a product that is easy to be ripped off or duplicated like that, knock your own product off first. Have a different brand, knock it off first.
Interesting.
So you capture both ends of the market. It's the person who goes into McDonald's, they don't like something that happened and said, I'm never coming back here again. I'm going across to Burger King, and you own the Burger King as well.
Wow. I feel like that happens in high-end fashion, where like a Prada, like a purse or whatever it would be ripped off by the company.
Right.
But they don't, because like the main company, this is allegedly, but you hear about this is really a good ripoff. It's almost like it's coming out of the same factory, or it's a moonlight, version of it. Go ahead.
I guess then just a continuation from that. So obviously the business background, like what brings you kind of into this season of life with politics?
When I was done with the Hoverboard, when the patent sold and so forth, and I was out of that company, 3 months later, I got an invitation to be on the island of Menorca in Spain to help with the top 20 startup companies in the world. They were trying to encourage entrepreneurship in Spain. They saw what we had done and what my background's been. So I was there and, met someone from the White House at that time. And my journey literally, that launched it into the world of governments. He asked me to speak at Harvard some months later. There was 132 world leaders there, including the ambassadors and so forth from 32 countries. And literally, I was not even off the last step at the end of my speech, and 3 countries were lined up and wanting to, do some kind of consulting contract. So it was an interesting journey, but that is what launched me, pivoted from business into government. And I still did not know the end of that. It seemed all kind of random and one-off. And then in 2017, the U.S.-China trade war, a lot of rhetoric was around that. And Bloomberg asked me for the year ahead. I was going to give a speech on the year ahead, their year ahead conference in Shanghai. And then Beijing found out I was going to be there, and they invited me to address, their business and government leaders in the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, China, in Tiananmen Square.
Wow.
And then the day before I was supposed to get on the plane, they had given me open, liberty as to what I was going to speak about. And so I had planned what I wanted to say. And then the day before I got on the plane, they said, well, we're changing your topic. We want you to talk about the U.S.-China trade war. And I was supposed to speak on Wednesday. President Trump was meeting Xi Jinping for the first time that Saturday. And I said, well, I don't know this administration's policies at all. I don't want to start a world war or a trade war.
Yeah.
And so I certainly don't want to be speaking in, the most reverenced place there about this.
Can you imagine if you just said something that was like completely opposite of what they wanted you to say? Oh, that's too much pressure to put on you, man.
Especially when you're not briefed about it.
Give me a note first.
Right. I mean, I was going to go in and talk about business and talk about, some principles that how to grow companies and entrepreneurship as it relates to economies. I was going to be speaking on those kind of matters, certainly not the nuances of the U.S.-China.
So before we move into like politics more, I would love to, can you talk a little bit about your fork in the road analogy? Because I'm very guilty of exactly what you're about to tell. So can you just elaborate a little bit more about that? I know we talked a little bit about it last night.
Yeah. So, I have a video out on the single fork strategy. And in business, my belief from studying and observing hundreds and thousands of people and lives is that the main reason people fail is broken focus. That's really the main reason. And it's hard because there's a lot of things that break our focus. We get discouraged. When the obstacles come, we start to diminish the reward is not worth the effort, how much effort it's actually taking. And so the single fork strategy simply is, most people, when they come to a fork in the road, they take it in life. Companies do this all the time. I use airlines a lot, but you could use tech company. For example, airlines was, if you're starting an airline, you'd say, okay, are we going to be pleasure or business? Are we going to have first class, business class, or coach economy class? Are we going to allow pets or not allow pets? Are we going to serve meals, not serve meals? And most airlines, are we going to fly this size plane or that size plane? And they say yes, yes, and yes. And the problem is, and then you take somebody like Southwest when they first started, and it's evolved since those days, but how they rose to prominence was the single fork strategy. They said, we're pleasure only. We're not going to, instead of first class, business class, and economy class, we have one class. We're going to fly one type of jet so that if a part breaks, we're not waiting for parts from this special plane in this year, to come in and be flown in on a different plane. We can interchange parts, so it's more economical. And within every industry, even in technology, Nokia was a big one that as you have some success, it's just the natural tendency of companies to then start going into other arenas. And then they always end up, after that doesn't work and do what they want, they always end up spinning those companies off, going back to their core competency and trying to develop it.
But you were telling us that that Nokia was like the first ones to the cell phone
market.
They
invented the cell phone, right?
And once that was working, Then they turned to everything else and they got blown away by everybody else because their focus wasn't there. I'm guilty of that, man. I don't know if it's like a new shiny thing syndrome, but like a lot of times I'm like, okay, I'm making money over here. I can then focus my other energy elsewhere, and then that suffers. And that was where my money came from. And honestly, you talking about that last night was like, good. I'm not the only person that fell for that.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's about stabilizing what's over here. Like you started this thing, get it, establish process, get it done, get it so it can not run itself, but it's smooth, it's stabilized, and then move on to that next thing. Because I think we're inclined, I know, you and I talk about this a lot, where we're inclined to, we start a thing and it's like, oh wait, this is an opportunity over here, so let's sprint over to this direction, and it's you're doing 10 things at once.
It's true, but I will say that you still have to be careful. So, for example, Rolls-Royce, great car, things like that. I don't want to buy their luggage. You want their car.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't even know they had luggage.
Yeah.
There are
expensive.
There are different brands that they are great at what they do, and they go into something else. And I'm telling you, it's not the best in that category. They never are the best in the second category, which then cheapens the brand of the first category.
Oh, sure.
Well, we were talking about this with Google. Like Google's core competency is search, including YouTube. It's a search engine. Basically, it all feeds back to search. But they have thousands of products that they spend billions of dollars on, and it fails again.
Or never sees the light of day.
Or never sees the light of day. Or like I get into a product, I'm like, this is a great product, awesome. Then they cancel it. Is this something you learned the hard way, or?
Well, certainly, because I thought, we have to have a lot of irons in the fire, and if you read the books, and I would sit in bookstores and read, when I was 19 years old, and it was all about diversify your portfolio. I need to be spread out, and then I found out I was spread thin, and it was better for me to concentrate on one thing and do it the absolute best. The problem is, and by the way, if you can't be number 1 or 2 in the world, speaking now about business, don't do it. If you're going to start something, if that's the objective, that is, a lot of people just want to make ends meet and they just want to have a lifestyle business. That's great. I'm not talking about that. The solopreneur, the financial advisor, people that are in the self-employed and solopreneur world, that's different. They're just trying to make a living. But people who are trying to build companies, it's a completely different thing. And then there's a lot of people who are, what the hardest thing for me in business was timing. So for me, I always was too early with coming out with the product or the service. I saw where things were going, and that was my gift. It was also what held me back and hurt me in the early days, because I was like, well, everybody's going to be using this. Yes, but not tomorrow. And then rarely could I hang on long enough financially until it did hit. So it was, for me, it was all about learning the timing of the market. And I got better at that because you start getting in tune with it. And when your goals change, when you stop trying to build a company for notoriety or to achieve a certain dollar amount, and you actually start trying to add value, and how do I change and improve people's lives, and what can I do? What is a product or service that will absolutely change everyone's life if they will use it?
Man. And you've written so many books. I was like, you know what? I'll read his book before I come to see you. And then I was like, wait, 6, 7? How many books this guy got? So I've started in on one of your books. I'm already loving it. It's the 88 Days to Success. Is that correct?
Yeah, 88 Days to Any Goal.
Any goal. How in the world do you have that time to sit down and focus all that energy while you're also doing business? You're also going all over the world, meeting with different world leaders. How in the world do you have that time, man? Are you just that good at time management?
I do it on planes. And I do it in a very focused, once again, the only reason men fail is broken focus. I do it in highly focused times where I may not even eat for a day or 2 days or something. And it's just going, and it is just flowing, and I do it all, and I sit there until it's done. You're talking about time management. I think that's one of the, it is important, but it is the byproduct of emotional management. People are so well time managed, and they're missing the biggest things go right by them because their time is so well managed. A lot of people would be better off if they do less time management and focus more on energy management. what is the 1, 2, 3 things today that deserve all of my energy? And if nothing is big enough that is on your to-do list today to give all of your energy, maybe you want to have something, a higher goal to go for.
Wow.
I'm wondering, could you talk a little bit about your relationships with world leaders? I know that you've done a lot of work in Africa. You've had some really great relationships with leaders around the world and in Africa. There's been some difficult conversations I know you've had to work through.
Before we get into that, I want to, because it leads into that, the foundation that you started, where was for Down syndrome CEOs. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
International Down Syndrome
CEO Camp.
CEO Camp. Yeah. That led to a lot of what you're working around.
It
the
really
world.
led to everything in Africa. So
can you explain that business?
So back in 2014 and 15, I started doing business boot camps. It was business in a day. So you'd come to a 4-hour seminar from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on a Saturday, and you could bring your idea, and we would help you. We would get your business ready to do a transaction by 1 p.m. Like we literally, from start to finish, you just bring your idea. We will help you get your business started.
And that was in the States.
And that was in the States.
And this was
I was doing it
people who had Down syndrome?
No. Okay, this was just generally.
Just general. Okay.
We were in technical trade colleges, ITT Tech at the time. We did it in high schools, did it even in junior high for 7th graders, did it at the University of Georgia, University of Montana, several different places where I did this boot camp. But then we had the president of the DSA, CF, Down Syndrome Association of Central Florida, come and say, hey, would you mind doing this for the people in our organization, because the main reason was people with Down syndrome are the only people group in America that it is still to this day legally you can pay them 25 cents an hour. Wow. So they do not aren't covered under the minimum wage laws.
Really?
They're the only people group that are. Yeah. So I was just blown away by that.
Me too.
And it was really sad. And so when they said that, I said, well, absolutely, because we wanted to empower them. But neither one of us knew how it would go. And because you have to go a little bit slower, you have to communicate it in a little bit different way, and you have to be understanding, and you have to be more animated, and not just going to a business school, right? And so we did it. But it was such an incredible time because they would come, their parents would come, or their support person, and it was incredible. Their eyes would light up for the first time. I remember we still have some that are doing 6 figures now. Really? In their businesses. Awesome. And I'm telling you, when you see people, they love getting the cash and making a sale. They love it. But what we gave them was dignity. We empowered them through entrepreneurship.
I love that
and
so
I've
much.
said entrepreneurship is the greatest economic engine on earth. And so even though the government isn't protecting them financially, I said, you don't have to wait for that. You can go and do this. And so that's what we did. So anyway, then they said it needs to be longer. How can we do it, 2 days, 3 days a week? And so that's how the International Down Syndrome CEO Camp was birthed. We hosted it at Liberty University using their campus and dormitories during the summertime when students are gone. And, it was just a great thing. Then the Office of Partnerships, the United Nations, they said, why don't you go to Africa? They said, we want you to go to Africa. If you can help the Down syndrome and underprivileged, underserved communities here in the United States do this in a day, we think you'll be more effective than what we've been trying over in Africa. I said, okay, interesting, sure. So I started going there and doing this. And the first day I had, maybe 60 entrepreneurs scheduled to meet with me. They were each getting 5 minutes. And 2 ladies who had come from different parts of Kenya that day literally had almost the same story. One had walked like 8 hours to be able to meet with me. And she starts into this business pitch, and then she stops and breaks down and says, what am I doing here? And she's just crying. She said, I don't even know how we're going to eat tonight. We don't have water. Water's our big issue. We don't need food, but we have to have the water. And I've got 4 children and a cow, but the cow needs the clean water. The baby's going to have to die so that the cow can get the water to keep us alive. And when you're having to make decisions like that, I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing here? Like, what are you going to do? Tell them to start a business? We're nowhere near there yet. Let's get to sustenance first.
Yeah.
And then I learned a lot of other things. So that's what got me into clean water, by the way, and education in Africa, because I had to solve some of those problems in order to then help them economically. And so we do have Rollan College, the Kingdom School of Business and Entrepreneurship, and we graduated 2,451 students last year in that, entrepreneurs. And we saw, but entrepreneurship looks different, somewhat different in many parts, because there's not a post office. You can't tell them to make a product and ship it. They can't list something on eBay and then go, mail it. There's not a post office. There's not a way to do that in many parts of Africa. And so you have to learn how to do business in an entirely different way. Their internet is very unstable in most parts, and it's highly expensive because they're using cell phone minutes to pay for each minute they have internet.
So it's not like we do, where we pay monthly, we have access
and
monthly.
Unlimited, yeah.
So if their minutes run out mid-sell,
yeah, you're done.
They're done.
So when we tried to do virtual college, for example, or virtual school of business, and I had, hour-long classes on video and live streaming, that's all cool and everything, if you had a lot of money to have a lot of cell phone minutes.
Wow.
So you're having to pay so much just to watch it. It's not like here where, it's free. You're on watching it.
So how did you
speed.
how did you explain, or how do you freaking start a business when someone doesn't maybe have a car or internet,
right.
or
and most do not.
How did you? How could you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, what I love about all of the people that I've worked with in Africa is they all have big dreams. They all have big dreams. It's really exciting. But one of the things, and they're more tenacious than American entrepreneurs. They would do a little bit and say, okay, I tried, it failed. But what trying and failing means over there is far more brutal than what it is here. So I love that their tenacious spirit. But we had one student who they had 2 chickens, and that was a big deal. So it's like, what do you have? What does God put in your hands? He only requires us to do with our talents what he puts in our hands. So what do you have that we can work with? And you go through a lot of the normal questions. What do you have? What do you enjoy? What are your skills? What are you good at? What can you make? And this lady had 2 chickens. She was able to get 2 chickens. In the 1-year class, she was able to get up to over 80 chickens. We have pictures, and video actually of this. And she was able to go from just hoping to support her family's finances to paying all of the bills for her whole family.
Wow.
From 2 chickens to 80 chickens. And there's a whole life cycle with that now, because you have okay, these are the ones that are going to just produce the eggs. We're going to sell the eggs. These you're raising for reproduction and then to eventually sell off as meat.
Wow.
And you never run out of chickens.
So you're adding principles that work in America, London, and you're just saying, what do you have? How do we make it work? Do you feel like a lot of it is also giving them hope?
Without a doubt. Well, the biggest disconnect though was they had the big dreams, but the expectation of how to go from where they are to achieving those big dreams, it was a big disconnect, and they were very disconnected from reality. For example, on numerous occasions, at least 10% of the time, people would come and want $50 million, $60 million, $70 million for their idea to build a factory, maybe a rubber factory, maybe a rabbit factory, or a mining type of a factory. And I would say,
what is a rabbit factory?
70 million. Oh, rabbits are one of the fastest growing.
Like a rabbit processing factory?
Raising rabbits for meat. Rabbit
Have you
meat
eaten rabbit?
Well, they
it's actually pretty good.
They have
it's really growing in Asia.
Now,
Yeah, they produce like rabbits.
Well,
so
and especially in Africa, that's helpful. Because you need rapidly reproducing.
And they don't need a lot of food, and they produce or water. So it's a good product. I believe entrepreneurialism is just the great equalizer. Yes. I feel like in America, for some freaking weird reason, we are villainizing that in success. Mm-hmm. What are you doing? Can you speak to that, of why in America they're looking down on wealth, entrepreneurialism, when that is the thing that will be the great equalizer?
Will liberalize, because that's not really what they want. They really want us to be subjects. They really want control. And entrepreneurship will liberate you. You can't cry foul on your gender or on your religious bias or on any other, or your race. You can't claim anything. It's about you. And that's what the great liberator. And so they don't. They have to diminish the wealth in being rich, try to demonize that in order to get you back to work. Isn't it interesting that we measure the wealth in this country by our jobs report, right? Not by is your individual wealth going up or things like that. That you reap what you measure. And we measure the wrong things in the United States. We measure things that keep us losing. And so part of it is to know what to start measuring the right things.
What would you say to people that, because we got a lot of people who are wanting to be entrepreneurs. They're younger men, younger women. How do you encourage them that entrepreneurial wealth is good?
Yeah, well, back in the 80s and 90s, if you said you were an entrepreneur, it meant you were unemployed. It means you couldn't get a job, and I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah, that means you don't know, you're lost. But that did shift in around the 2009, 2010 timeframe. We started seeing colleges and universities add even an entrepreneurship program and bachelor's degree and doctorate degrees and so forth in that 2010, 2012, 2013 timeframe. And then even Harvard came out with their certificates and so forth around entrepreneurship. So it started gaining favor and popularity as the Steve Jobs, the Mark Cubans, at the time, and others. The Shark Tank obviously had a lot to do with some of that. But in the rise of making it okay. But the problem is understanding who you are. Entrepreneurship is not for everyone. It can be. It doesn't matter if you're outgoing or an introvert or none of those things matter. Your education doesn't matter. How much money you have doesn't matter because of all of the free tools that people can have. There are billion-dollar companies who do nothing but package free resources, and people pay for that. So it doesn't require any of those things. But what entrepreneurship does is it changes you. It changes your relationships. If you're married and you're trying to start a business for the first time, being, branching out on your own, understand that entrepreneurship, the problems you would normally experience in your whole life and in your marriage over a 20-year period, if you're going to go full-time in entrepreneurship, you're going to experience 20 years worth of problems in one. Yeah. That's why a lot of marriages struggle in the homes of entrepreneurs, because of the strain, the stress, the pressure, I only eat what I kill kind of, it's got to produce. And so you need to make sure that I was talking about timing earlier. The dream that God has put inside of you that you're wanting to birth in this business, you need to make sure it's the right time. I had an invention that would change all of the roads. So I was so sick of using asphalt. I'm looking around, I'm saying, are we not more advanced? Why are we having to fill potholes? Why are we ruining $100,000 cars hitting potholes? Don't we have a better material than asphalt for roads? And so I started looking at how to handle that with the snow, the ice, the salt, the things, the scorching sun, things that normally cause the problems, and the things that are going on underneath the earth, underneath the interstates. And so I was coming out with a technology that would be better than that. And then I realized, you're not the one to do it. It was not my time to do it, just because I had the idea and knew how to do it. And I knew that the problem wasn't we didn't have better technology. The problem was the system. Right. So the same thing with taxis and Uber. Right. It's not that there wasn't something better. We were using Microsoft, not because there wasn't anything better. It's because that was the way the deal was made with IBM. Right. Same thing here. The interstates, that whole federal money that keeps going into the construction, they need that road to break sooner rather than later, so that they can get more money and keep the people building, repave the same roads over and over and over.
Yeah, almost feels like our medical system. Keep them sick, keep it rich.
Yep. So obviously in politics, there's a lot of those same roadblocks, no pun intended, but like a lot of those same kind of, the system is what it is. So it makes improvements, even if they're good ideas, it makes them very difficult. Can you just speak to, again, given your background and given the things that you've done and worked through, how does that set you apart from both the Republican candidates as well as Joe Biden?
Well, so you want to not only be different, you want to be better. Politics, I don't view myself as a product, but if I was a product and the candidates were products on the shelf for the American people to choose, which one do we want? I do view that what they get with me that is different than all of the other candidates, regardless of party, is they get a fabric. They get a leader, a statesman that puts the country first. And a lot of people say, okay, America first or what have you, but what that really means at this point is Trump first. But there's a lot of people who do want America to be the focal point again. Like, let's stop sending money everywhere around the world. Mm-hmm. Can we please fix us here? It's not that we don't care about everyone around the world. It's that we just have so many problems here. We have to get our own house in order. And I have said from a foreign policy perspective that I want to cut off the aid that we've been giving for 40 plus years to so many different countries that are poorer now than when we started, because we did the same thing that we do to people here. That it enslaves them. It does not liberate them. I want to invest in those countries. In fact, we'll probably do double the amount of investments than we've been giving in aid. They'll get twice as much money, and it'll go to the people, not the people at the leaders at the top, which is what's creating all of the corruption to begin with.
Because we've talked about how when you give aid, and let's just say you send in millions of bushels of corn, well, that then just killed the entire market for people who are producing corn. There might have been enough farmers to give that corn. Maybe they needed help and investment in tractors and supplies. That's the difference.
Well, and in many cases, it's bags of cash. Yeah. It's like pallets of cash too. Right. So like, I think, are you describing maybe more like work programs and training programs, kind of like what you did here in Africa?
I think there's an element of that, but I really mean infrastructure. Okay. It is roads and canals and nuclear plants, energy plants, because how much of Africa is still in the dark, and they don't have the proper water, and they don't have stable electricity or services. If you want people to really flourish, they have to have this baseline of amenities with power, electricity, water, internet. Then the responsibility is on them for growing and flourishing and cohabitating in peace and so forth. And by the way, I still think that's part of our national security. One of the things that the Minister of Energy in Kenya and I were discussing a few years back with the other ministers of energy from neighboring nations is that if we put all of the East Africa, for example, on the same utility grid, they're less likely to attack the other country because then it inflicts harm on myself. So it's peace through shared services is the way, the corporate way we would look at it. There's great opportunities that achieves multiple objectives.
So you would help by not aid, it's investment. Okay. And you think we should stop giving so much money just out willy-nilly, especially when we have.
If you were my son, is it better if I give you $1,000, or is it better if I invest $10,000 into a business that can set you free and make money? It's a no-brainer. No-brainer. And I get the $10,000 back. We all win much better in the long run than if I just give the money out. It's the exact same thing with aid to foreign countries.
So, like you said earlier, and I cut you off like a jerk, but you're talking about how this all led to you being able to connect with world leaders. You've had some dicey situations. Can you actually tell us a little bit about some of the stories?
Well, and I think I know why you thought about that too, because what I'm hearing from you is some of the things that I think were probably communicated to you from world leaders about giving money versus investing.
Yes.
Some of those things too, right?
Yes. Yeah. I saw it firsthand in South Sudan. We give $1 billion of aid to that country, but the people weren't seeing it. And we were giving it from our right hand to our left hand. And so it was only enriching the wrong people, and it was incentivized. It was the wrong structure, similar to what our U.S. sanctions do. It has an opposite effect, especially as the dollar declines. But it's the same principle. I was in Chile, South America, just a few weeks ago, and was meeting with Carlos Cordon, one of the most wanted men in the world. Interpol has a red notice on him, and I can tell you that. The reason he has a red notice because the United States told Interpol to put a red notice on him. We had a red notice put on him.
Can you explain what that is?
Yeah. So red notice means you're the most wanted man in the world. I mean, there's very few people that have a red notice on them.
Do you get like a plaque for that? You can put up on your wall, like a YouTube subscriber level? I mean, like
that is a level that most people will never reach.
Or never want to reach.
Yeah. No. I mean, people think it's one thing if you're on the FBI's most wanted list, but this is for the whole world. So what do you have to do? Who do you have to make mad to for them to actually go to that link to put a red notice on you? And in this case, it was Uncle Sam. He did the bidding of the United States. He's a brilliant man. He is really a metallurgist, studies metals, and did in the United States. That's where he got his degree, University of Utah. And so he really is just excellent at metals. And so he invented the cluster bomb, patented it, by the way, in the United States. We patented it for him. He had been supplying it at our request to certain nations, including Iraq and Saddam Hussein, starting in like 1980. And so for over a decade, he was doing that wherever we asked him or with our approval. And then when and Saddam Hussein was our ally, actually, for most of the 80s. He was.
People forget that.
They were with us against Iran. And but then whenever he invaded Kuwait in 92, it became politically expedient for us to distance ourselves from him. And then obviously HW went after him, and that was Operation Desert Storm. And that is what soured the relationship. And so the United States needed a fall guy. And so we burned one of our greatest assets who did nothing but what we asked her with our approval. And so what he has been a prisoner in his own home and country for 30 years. And when I was on my way to meet him, I'm thinking, if you were a prisoner in your home for 30 years, how would you feel against the people who did that to you wrongly? How would you be bitter? Would you be over it? Would you not care anymore? But let me tell you, he absolutely did care. I spent several days with him.
You went to his house?
I went to his house, and I broke bread with him, and we were able to speak about things candidly. And I can tell you, the problem is that when the political winds change, even if you're doing what is asked of you, when they needed someone to burn, they burned him. And we didn't just burn him; they wanted him to just stay there and rot, and which he has for all these years, these decades. And so he's bitter about it. Who wouldn't be? But the reason he agreed to meet and talk about it was because he wants to clear his name. He did nothing wrong. He only did what was asked of him. And he wants, because Proverbs says a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches.
Right.
This man who's made billions of dollars understands that, had manufacturing companies around the world, understands that his name is important. He has children. He's got a legacy. And but that's just symptomatic. I was just having last week same issue with Liberia, sanctions that were slapped on Liberia that were unjust. Look, I'm all for just. But the problem is we're applying the wrong standards of justice to the wrong people.
So do you feel like if you were to become the president, you'd have the policy experience to fix this stuff and to help our reputation a little better? Absolutely. It's a matter of doing right. That's why you'll hear me state so many times that I will do what's right by American citizens and by the people and nations of the earth, because every last one of the people outside of the United States understand what I'm saying when I say that. American citizens, still half of them don't know that the government's lying to them about everything. Yeah. But everyone outside many of them have been brutalized by and beaten and bullied by the United States with sanctions, with corruption. So are we the bad guy?
Around the world, we are the bad guy that no one wants to talk about. They can't stand up to us yet. But see, it's like any bully. You can't really stand up to them until there's enough of you, until you've built up your war chest enough that you can survive independently of them. And most of the countries cannot survive independently of the United States. And you want once they can, with the de-dollarization, once they can stand and don't need us, now they will be honest. So you're saying instead of beating them with the dollar and with the military, you're saying invest. Do right by them. But take people that we've really burned and done wrong because we didn't like how it made us look, right? It was a bruise to our ego. So then we're gonna marginalize you and destroy your life. Well, you probably have children, and those children that carry your last name aren't going to be too happy with the United States. You just made enemies out of however many children they have and all the people connected to them. And so they're going to spend their whole life trying to get retribution. It is a national security thing. If I want your family to sleep soundly tonight, I have to do right as president of the United States by other people, because then there's not an incentive to attack.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. They always say history is written by the victor. And I think that a lot of our history leaves out the impact that we've had in these countries, these communities. And I think it's, we kind of touched on this when we were just chatting last night, but I think there's a lot of young leftists will say, Democrats in this country that may be excited to hear you say these things and hear you at least be sensitive to the power dynamics that exist between the U.S. and other nations and other world leaders. This relationship of the oppressor and the oppressed, the victimizers and the victims. Right. And I think it sounds like in your personal relationships that you've had with many of these leaders in these communities, you have a greater understanding, perhaps than what I've heard anyway, some of the other candidates on the right side of the aisle talk about.
But to your point, the oppressors versus the oppressed, I appreciate their heart. Mm-hmm. Every last young person on TikTok and everybody else that has this, a heart for other people and compassion. The problem is people older, smarter, more manipulative than them are manipulating their emotions. It's the right feeling expressed the wrong way. So it's great to have this compassion for the oppressors or for the oppressed against the oppressors. The problem is we've manipulated who the oppressor and the oppressed are, and we have really brainwashed you into defining who that is, and it's exactly opposite. That's why evil is called good today and good is called evil, but they do it out of a genuine place. Mm-hmm. And yet it's completely opposite of what it should be.
And I agree with that fully. I think I think in many cases, people's hearts are in the right place. They're leading with compassion and emotion and love in a lot of cases, but it manifests in misguided rage and hate and frustration.
Sure. So they have a right to be angry with the way things are today, or confused and concerned. I really believe that the issue, they try to tell us all the time, the media, try to tell us all the time who the enemy should be. The Chinese should be our enemy. The Russians, the enemy. Putin's the devil, The Democrats demonize the Republicans demonize the Democrats. First of all, you can't unite the country if you're demonizing half the people.
Yep. Sure.
It just doesn't work. So you can't, no one on any of the other candidates can even remotely with any amount of integrity say, we want to unite the country, because all of your rhetoric does the exact opposite. It's 49.9 and 50.1. Yep. What's one side or the other?
You had mentioned Julian Assange. If you became president, would you pardon Edward Snowden and Julian Assange?
I would Julian Assange.
Okay.
And I will pardon Edward Snowden, but I have an asterisk with him. Okay. I would pardon, but only because he went through all the proper channels and was rejected.
Right.
What do you do in a corrupt system when you try to do it the right way? See, when you try to expose it the right way, he didn't become a traitor to the United States and just find out the secrets and then go blab it, everywhere to the media. He tried to go through the proper channels. As I understand.
Edward Snowden?
Yes.
Okay.
So there are other people who do not. Some people do just take what they find and go, hey, this is corruption, I'm going to just tell everybody. They don't go through the proper whistleblower channels and so forth. In his case, he became the target because he blew the whistle. It was so sensitive to the United States.
Well, it was embarrassing because a lot of people don't know this, but he exposed the fact that the CIA, the FBI was listening and everything, listening to our phone calls without a warrant, looking through our emails, our texts, everything about us. And it's almost like everybody's like, well, he's a traitor. It's just like, well, maybe officially, but he wasn't allowed to do it right. And what about us? What about us, the people? Why aren't we upset that
you know what
happened?
That whole argument is about? The letter of the law versus the spirit of the law.
Yeah, man. Ooh,
people like to gravitate on, well, this is what it says. It's all black and white right here, the letter of the law.
Right.
And it's like, yes, but. And that's why I have the asterisk. The spirit of this was not menacing. He wanted change. He tried to get it the right way. We wanted to keep doing wrong by Americans and tried to silence him. And so, yes, I would pardon him. That is a different case. I think in his case, and people like that is a case-by-case thing. Julian Assange, not even an American citizen. Right. What in the world are we doing? Same thing with Carlos Cardone. He's not even an American citizen. Why are we trying to seek extradition and try him in the United States?
It's because we're embarrassed.
We're embarrassed. That's it.
I mean, sometimes at some point in time, we just got to man up, admit when we did wrong, and try to make retribution.
We have we have the emotional IQ of elementary children in our current political leadership roles.
Wow.
There is going to be no manning up, and let's do right.
You had mentioned TikTok. Okay. You shocked me a little bit on your views. Should we ban TikTok?
So, as a general rule, I don't think we should go around banning companies in the United States unless there's a national security interest, a reason to do that. Usually that has to do with warfare and weapons. However, the thing with TikTok, coming from the business background, I looked at it and said, that's pretty low that Facebook, Instagram, the other social networks are falling so far behind because they were the leaders for so long and didn't innovate and didn't keep up, and they focused more on woke and their agendas than they did on actually building great technology. And the Chinese just built great technology. And then, and so just because we're getting beat by a foreign company doesn't mean we go and ban it. Now, the argument, so as a general rule, no, I don't want to ban. I want everybody else to get better. Now, that being said, obviously, those who are in favor of banning it, let me just also say this for the listeners. I do think there should be a minimum age on all social media. 16 and above is probably around where that threshold should be. But I'm not holding fast to that. That can be a national debate. But I do think that we have to protect children. There's too many studies. Even Zuckerberg and others know. Your brain physically is altered when you spend time on social media.
Zuckerberg and most of the guys who own the social platforms don't have their kids on it.
No, because of the inherent dangers.
Yeah, that says something.
Yeah, and so, but here's what the people who say we should ban TikTok. That's just the easy way out. But it's also a dangerous way because you're banning competition in the United States. What happens whenever all these foreign countries start banning our companies doing business and have invested hundreds of billions of dollars abroad?
But then what about if you do business in China, you're doing business with the Chinese government most of the time. So people are worried about not social security, but national security with the fact that backdoors.
Return your Apple Watch, return your Alexa, return your, nearly every electronic in your home if somebody feels that strongly about it, because it's all coming from China anyway. They're producing and manufacturing so much of what we have and consume.
So what he's saying is we should be Amish.
What I'm saying is we need American entrepreneurs. Yeah. I'm promoting entrepreneurship again.
I love it.
But that also goes back to a president that protects the trade. And that is where what Trump was doing. The mission was noble in that our trade deficit is so out of balance with China specifically that it is a threat to the American economy and to American national security. Because we become not independent. We can't even have an alarm clock. Like what you said, if we stopped buying from the Chinese, we're going to go back to living off the grid just about. So the people who say to ban it, they're saying it because of the back door and because it's national security and they're taking all of our information. What do you think we're doing with Facebook and Instagram? We're taking everybody else's. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. I'm okay with banning TikTok, but you have to be okay with Facebook and Instagram being banned in every other country. Mm. But now let me ask you, Mr. Entrepreneur, who's selling through the Shopifys and all these pop-up shops on social media, what are you going to do whenever we just cut out a bunch of income in the United States because they're shipping all over the world, to these things too. So it's got to work both ways. I'm just saying right now it's all double speak. Where's the conviction? Where do you really stand on that issue?
Well, even on AI, man, you got a bunch of these people who developed AI, like Google, like ChatGPT, even with Microsoft. Now they're the ones coming out and saying, "Hey, we got to regulate this."
Right.
Before basically all other entrepreneurs can get in the game, they're saying we should regulate this. We should regulate this. It's like, bro, you already got it. No wonder you're trying to regulate it. But they do that where it's just like, oh, we're not beating TikTok, so get rid of it or let us buy it at a discount.
Right. And by the way, if they beat it up enough, that is what happens. It's the same thing that happens with crypto. Banks, even JP Morgan and Diamond, they're saying, no crypto, no crypto. His daughter is buying Bitcoin, and then they're coming out with their own. So it's really, no, not until we can catch up is what they really mean. But here's the thing with AI. I was working on artificial intelligence defense systems. Started off in cybersecurity and then went to that.
Wow.
And so in 2018, 19, 20, 21, I was really deep into the artificial intelligence as it relates to more defense systems and weapons than business applications. A lot of startups were doing business, and how you separate this orange from a ripe orange from one that's rotten or something. So I wasn't focused on that side. Here's the thing with artificial intelligence. And I was having a conversation with one of the former leads at the Pentagon, heads of artificial intelligence at the Pentagon, about this a couple of years ago. And the problem is there were some things I was seeing what I was able to do, and I didn't want to overstep with some of the things that I was working on and creating. And I thought, man, am I even allowed to sell this to another company or another country or a foreign company? And because it seemed too powerful. How in the world are we able to do this? And you know what he said? He said the United States is reactive, not proactive. He said, we don't really have a council on artificial intelligence or committees on this, and we don't really put in safeguards until something bad happens. Then we put the committees together, and then we figure out how to keep that from happening again. And that's where the regulation comes from.
I don't think we can do that with AI. Like, it's so fast. It's
right.
So good, and it's growing every single day. I'm a technologist, if that's even a word. I love technology.
Technologist, not a linguist? Is that what you're saying?
Dude, I read up on it. I love it. I love checking out new AI products. I love working with it. We've got it in our workflow. Yeah. I cannot keep up.
Right.
I mean, it's just like everything's new, everything's faster. And then when you work in quantum computing in the future, it's scary. We can't be reactive. We have to.
And yesterday, one of the AI robots at the Tesla Gigafactory pinned one of the workers, and there was a trail of blood and everything else that came out yesterday. There's going to be challenges on that, but it's not going to be stopped. But there has to be some semblance of safety or minimum guidelines on how to, when you're working with these things. Right now, it is the Wild West.
Oh, yeah.
Of artificial intelligence.
Well, do you think some of this, though, is because, like, a lot of our politicians don't get it? They literally don't understand.
They can't. I've spent during the night in Istanbul, in Doha, in Qatar, Juba, different countries around the world with sitting Congress people and U.S. ambassadors talking through the night, talking all kinds of issues in politics and policies. And let me tell you, most of them cannot even send a text message. They struggle with turning on their phone. They literally, I look at them try to navigate through their way through an airport, and I'm like, how do you even live? Like, as a normal person, much less as a leader. Yeah. It was shocking. I think it's one of the things God used to give me encouragement that, yes, I do want you to run for president, because I always held it in such high esteem. But when you're around the people who were controlling your life on a daily basis, these are people you would not hire to be a supervisor at McDonald's. They would not, and I'm not exaggerating. That's not just a pun. You would not.
Wow.
Because they are incapable of working the cash register. They'd be incapable of wrapping the hamburger the right way. They are physically incapable of the most simple task. And yet, they're going to handle nuclear weapons. They're going to handle artificial intelligent weapons. And they're making decisions, but their brain operates in such a silo they can't even hear or see anything else. That is what has bred the problem in America, why parties, the two-party system, became so prominent, because people couldn't think. They stopped thinking, and they needed two parties, whichever side you were generally on, to tell you how to feel about everything. Isn't it interesting, if something tragic happens today, the first thing people would do is go to hear how other people are processing it. How do I speak about this tragic event? Am I supposed to be against guns? Am I supposed to be for guns? Am I supposed to be against abortions? Am I supposed to be for, women's prerogative and choice? And so, they go based on whatever the news story is to their party. And we are not supposed to be a party of a government of the party by the party and for the party. We are a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. It is we, the people. We are a representative form of government. We are a constitutional republic. People, the last couple of days, even out of the White House, they've been saying we have to save our democracy. And if Trump is elected, it's an attack on our democracy. The Colorado ruling, then the Republicans said, now you're attacking the democracy. I'm not going to try to preserve something we're not. We're not a democracy.
No, we're not.
We're not mob rule. This is not majority rules. It's a constitutional republic, a representative government.
Why don't people know that?
Our education system. We were more interested in you finding out which of the 167 genders you were, and if we need to put a litter box in your classroom, than teaching you, science and math and history.
It's funny how people can come out and not even know how to pay taxes. not even know how to write a check, not even know how to even think about running a business. It's just do as you're told. Right. And do it the best you can. And it's like, I don't think it's teaching people to think critically. I think it's teaching people to just regurgitate.
Yeah, to memorize. I mean, they're teaching them. They're not teaching them how to think. They're teaching them what to think.
Yeah, that's better.
And really programming. But it didn't always used to be that way. And I used to think that education, and what we were told was go to school, get a good education, make good grades, go to college, and then get a good job, and you'll have a good life. Save for retirement, and you'll have a good life. That just doesn't apply anymore. That's not the rules of life. And partly because the education system is failing every single person going through it right now in the public education world because they have focused on not helping you make a living. It has nothing to do with will you be a productive citizen of society when you graduate. It has everything to do with will you be an obedient and compliant citizen of society.
Wow.
Yeah, we talk a lot about that.
Because we want to be able to take care of you. So because you're so incompetent, we have seniors graduating with diplomas that can't read. Okay. We have failed them. America has failed them. And the problem is how nefarious this is. It was intentional because they wanted you to be dependent upon the government because it's a lot easier to pass socialist policies, which is the, beginning stages of communism if you can't support yourself.
Wow. AI is going to take a lot of people's jobs.
Yes.
Do you feel like you have what it takes to combat that, where you can, since you are an entrepreneur, do you think you could help with people starting businesses that work with AI? Because we assumed that it would take over the laborers' jobs or like someone on the factory line, and it went straight for artists, copywriters, people in office, jobs that people weren't expecting to be like, oh my gosh, my job might be obsolete. Do you think you have what it takes to combat that? Just a new world with artificial intelligence.
Without a doubt. And that's why I want our education system focused on on my education plan. It solves a lot of the jobs of the future and our economy. But, by the way, the byproduct of my educational policies is that we will have reduced teen pregnancies, reduced depression, and reduced teen suicides. Simply because I would extend the school day to 5 p.m., most of the pregnancies and the drug abuse and the suicides are happening between 2:30 and 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock when they are unsupervised. They're out of school, but mom and dad aren't home yet. Right. And so, and that puts women disproportionately, they are the ones usually that have taken a lesser job, which then affects their pay. And then we think it's inequality of income. And it's really that they're choosing to take, in some cases, a different job with lower responsibilities so that they can be there for their children instead. So it skews, once again, we're measuring the wrong thing. So this would, by me having school in the morning and then for the afternoon, the bachelor's degrees would run concurrently with high school so that everyone's graduating, and that solves the student loan problem.
So can you talk about that a little bit? So in your idea is that they could focus on their bachelor's degree after 3 o'clock when they would normally
after 12 noon, because there's too much time in the school day. Out of an 8-hour school day, there's like 2 hours of teaching. I mean, it's poorly planned. They're trying to stretch it out. And so, but we're going to do the opposite. We're going to cram more of the information, which is not actually cramming. It's actually stimulating the brain, which they're so bored with how we've stretched it out that's why a lot of the behavioral problems we have. And a lot of public school teachers I talk to, they love teaching. They don't love the behavior problems that, come along with that. And I think it's because the students aren't challenged. These are bright people. You're talking about Gen Z and leftists and young left. They're bright people. They're not idiots. The problem is they live in a system that they know is archaic and that is fake and inauthentic. That's the problem. We need to challenge them. My daughter, we've helped her start businesses, but she wanted to get out of high school and, wasn't even sure if she wanted to go to college or not because she just wants to start earning. I'm telling you, we are made to be productive people. whoever sold us on this at the age we're supposed to be going in the workforce, let's go cram a 4-year degree into 8, and then let's spend a couple of years traveling the world to find ourselves, and then we're 30 years old and we're still on mom and dad's couch, and then we're going to go out and get a job and try to start figuring out. We just lost 12 years of the most productive years of your life. Think about what that's done as a nation. Imagine if I have an entire generation that are able to be productive at the age that they are innately wanting to be productive, their best earning years, and just excitement, full of energy and life and vigor. And instead, we've put them up in a classroom somewhere. It's no wonder they are the most medicated, depressed age group in America.
Do you think you have the gumption to try to tackle that system and help out even with like student loan debt? I feel like a lot of people's depression comes from the fact that they just worked all these years to get this degree that they thought was going to give them a good income, and then they realize, shoot, I owe $150,000. I'm going to be 50 before I pay this off.
Well, yes, my plan is very similar to what I told you with my foreign aid. I would drop aid and start investing. I'm not going to forgive the student loans. I'm going to pay off the student loans to follow that right principle. And how we would do this is because now that I'm using the K through 12 school buildings and school facilities for even our bachelor's programs, there's a lot of public universities in America that we no longer need. We're double paying and double dipping. So I'm using the dormitories for veteran housing and for long-term mental health housing. We have to fix mental health crisis, and we need to do it, not the neglecting insane asylums of the 80s, but an actual good, helpful, long-term mental health. But what that does is it frees up their endowments. That most of their endowments, about $1 trillion worth of endowments, that were funded from federal dollars every year. At the same time, we're giving them more money. They're raising tuition more than any other commodity or service or product in the United States. And we're the ones underwriting that too, because it was through a student loan. So they have built these massive endowments with federal taxpayer dollars. And yes, there have been some investments or donations and so forth as well, but the vast majority is taxpayer funding. So what I'm going to do is take the endowments, negotiate with the very providers that created the problem to begin with, pay whatever pennies on the dollar that we need to, if it's 50 cents on the dollar, 20 cents on whatever it is, but I will use that endowment to pay it off. So I will pay it off, and then we will stop that. Now, we will never underwrite federally a student loan again. But if you, as a private citizen, wants to go to a bank, or this is an opportunity for a new entrepreneur who says, okay, there's going to be this niche of society that they want to go get a specialized education or private education or a Christian education, or they want to learn about this or that, cosmetology school or, whatever. And so you're going to finance this or for this institution, then it allows for but that's the system, the free enterprise system working as it ought to.
Well, what were you telling me earlier this week about endowments with Stanford? I think it was.
No, it was Harvard.
Harvard.
Harvard's endowment is so big. I read something, and I don't have my computer to verify this, but like they could let everybody have free tuition for like 100 years off their endowment based on how many people come to Harvard every year. For like 100 years, they could pay for it. And it's just like, wait, how big is their endowment? Why are they still raising money? And why do we help give? I'm not saying Harvard exactly, but like, why are we giving them money? Why are we backing their loans? Like, I feel like it's a gamed system, and I think a lot of young people are realizing this ain't working, and I want to change it. Now, I guess I'm a little shocked that you said that you would pay off those loans. I feel like a lot of Republicans wouldn't necessarily, they'd be like, well, you took the loan, you deal with it.
Right. Yeah. Because once again, that's what the party, the two parties took very hard line. Forgive the loans. Nope, it was your loan. I'm not paying. The reason they said that was because Mr. Hard Worker who never went to college, blue collar, working a job, built a good life for himself, and he's going to have to pay because you decided to take some worthless underwater basket weaving bachelor's degree that anybody with half a brain should have known will never pay a dime, and you were dumb enough to get a bachelor's degree in it. Why in the world should he have to pay that? Okay, that's the people that you hear saying, no, snowball's chance, I'm paying this.
Right.
That's the scenarios that they have in their minds. But I go back to what is the principle? The principle is the system was corrupt.
100%.
The system was gamed. It is not right. No, we shouldn't have sold you on the underwater basket weaving bachelor's degree. I'm sorry. No, you should not have to pay for his worthless degree.
Right.
But we are where we are. I can't change anything in the past. What I can do is do right today. And what is right today given the mixed bag that I have to deal with, is I'm going to stop the aid. We're going to stop the bleeding, just like at the border. We're going to stop the bleeding, and then we're going to fix the problem. Whether it's immigration, whether it's education, technology, we have to stop the bleeding, and then we have to fix the problem. We have to make it right. How I make that right in this case is by not forgiving, because they did incur the debt, but by taking money that's already been given to them and paying that.
Why in the world is it not considered predatory to give that big of a loan to an 18-year-old who doesn't even know how to probably brush his teeth properly?
But you couldn't have gotten a car loan for used car loan by yourself without a cosigner. Yeah.
Well, what's interesting though is there are a lot of other things in this nation that we consider not predatory to try to convince young people of, and it's happening every day.
Good point.
And it's you can't call that predatory and then not call the other thing.
Do you have an example?
The other thing being, I would say a lot of what happens in our school system, a lot of it happens, the wokeness, specifically, I would say, there's a big conversation with, maybe we can get into it or not, but, with, I would say, sexuality, transgenderism, there are places in this country where, literally children are having conversations without their parents, but with people in positions of authority in the school system. I would say that that's predatory.
It's a concerted effort too. It's intentional. So here's the question on that: who owns the children?
Right.
See, once again, you ask the wrong questions, you're going to get wrong answers. You ask the right questions, you get right answers. The right question here is who owns the children. The reason everyone else is talking about all of these different issues in parents' rights, and the same conversation goes to vaccines as it would to, can they cut off body parts and mutilate their genitals? I mean, the issue is who owns, who's responsible for the children. Government believes they are. I believe that biblically parents are. God gives parents the responsibility to raise their children, to educate their children. God never said, send them to the public school and give them the Department of Education. And that's not it. You can choose as a parent to outsource that responsibility to educate your child to whatever school you choose, but it's still your responsibility. What they're learning was being taught, and it doesn't abdicate your responsibility to be teaching still whenever you're with them. In fact, when you wake up, when you go to bed, when you come in, and when you go out, it says you're supposed to be teaching them all the time. So, it's a concerted effort.
How dare they actually have that opinion that it's their kid, basically? Like, as a parent, the fact that they want to come around and say that they believe it's their responsibility to raise the kid and all that stuff, man, that's the reason why my
Property
child,
of the state.
Yeah, my child will never go to public school. Now, I'm gonna have to work my butt off to make sure that's paid for. But the reality is like, I don't trust them to not indoctrinate or even just confuse my children, because a child, like you said, they're not enough to, first off, get to sign for a loan. They can't get a car loan, but they get these big loans. But why in the world would they ever be able to choose their gender at such an age?
Why are you even having a conversation choosing your gender? Here's why this even became a thing, because people have lost their identity in Christ. They don't know who they are. And when you don't know who you are, if you don't believe you are created by an almighty God, then you can be anything, and who's to say that you're not? But if we are made in the image of God, and I believe that humans are, that's what we're told scripturally, then anything we do to alter that means we're not okay with ourselves. And by the way, a lot of the people who talk a lot about the transgenderism and, have a lot of compassion really for them. It's interesting because the biggest challenges they actually face is the second greatest commandment, love your neighbor as yourself. And of course that as yourself is what gets everybody, because they don't accept who they are. They don't accept how they were made. And so whenever I can't accept myself, how in the world can I treat you the way I'm supposed to treat you? I'm confused about me. I certainly don't have a clue about you. I'm going to have an opinion about you, but it's going to be messed up and confused. And that's what we have today. So I have a lot of compassion for those who are confused. I think their confusion is real, by the way. I don't think I think there was a time when a lot of people, when it was just becoming introduced to society, that it seemed like a cry for attention. Like, okay, dye your hair 15 more shades of some, neon colors and we'll get some attention. And it's moved past that to so many of them, they're not seeking attention, they are hurting. There is pain.
I agree. I love that you have a little compassion for them, because it's like when we come in swinging and we come from anger, what are we doing? There's just no compassion for them. And I don't like that.
No, it's not right. And they're genuinely confused and they're genuinely searching. And who they believe they are, they actually really believe it. So to go in there and convince them, yeah, but you're not, be practical, be realistic. That's a dead end conversation. It's dead on arrival.
Why aren't we telling them, hey, you don't need to change yourself. You are good who you are. Grow spiritually, grow mentally, but like you don't have to change your appearance to love yourself.
Mm-hmm. And that's really the once again the whole issue is their ability to accept themselves.
Can we talk about national defense?
Yes.
Obviously, it's a tumultuous time right now. We have intense combat and intense discussion, obviously, around Hamas and Israel. Palestinian territory. We have issues with our own southern border with mass immigration. We've got an aggressive China in the Indo-Pacific and the South China Sea. We've got war between Russia and Ukraine. There's a lot happening right now. A lot of things I think that are keeping Americans up at night, either because they are in fear of escalating conflicts, or they're in fear of their own fellow citizen feeling extremely different about things than they do. What keeps you up at night when it comes to these conflicts, when it comes to, foreign policy?
I'll tell you what keeps him up at night is his newborn baby.
Yeah.
But your child is growing up in this world, so it's got to terrify you, man, about this whole crisis.
My wife was telling me just the other day that she said if they say one more thing about the draft, she was going to lose it, because she said, you first. You send your son first before you send ours. And I'll tell you, because it's been, since JFK that we've had a young family in the White House. The Secret Service hasn't had to guard a baby for 60 years. It's going to be new for them, and when my wife likes to joke about it, because she'll say they'll be like baby raptors on the loose, baby raptors on the loose. Somebody who has eyes on baby raptors, and whoever drew the short draw, who came in late, or you're on baby duty, baby raptor duty this week. Because there's actually, you make better policy when you are living where Americans live. We have had presidents that are so out of touch to the way you and I live. They don't know what it's like walking into a Walmart. You know how many decades it's been since they've pumped their own gas? Like, that's foreign. To us, we just do it, but that's foreign to them. So when they make policy on war and invasions, and drafts and so forth, it's kind of like, you first, lead by example. But here's the thing. Most of them are being driven by parties, lobbyists, and interests, parties that are making them take certain stances on these nations. We're not coming from a United States perspective of how do I do right in this situation. There are complex messes on earth. It's absolutely complex, and it is messy. And you touch one little thing over here and 30 other things ripple over here, unintended consequences. You better have some wisdom and discernment. We don't. What we have are emotional reactions like a toddler that you did this, I'm going to do that. And there are some people that try to think through, but 80% of our foreign policy consultants and advisors have their heads in the sand or in the clouds about the future. For example, our China policy. They have just said, we just have to keep giving China more time to learn how to be a democracy, to learn how to, and so even whenever the Tiananmen Square massacre happened, in the 80s, there a lot of people were saying, wait, maybe we were wrong on the policy. And then they're saying, no, freedom is messy. Give them time to figure it out. Look at our history, after all, Civil War. And I mean, we've got all these years of practice and we still can't, look at it today. It's a mess. And so from a national defense and security perspective, what keeps me up at night is the people in charge. It's not that the problems aren't solvable. It's that we have people who are uninterested and detached, and the only interest that our current parties and presidents have is their own interest as it relates to their own interest in foreign affairs, not what is best for the world, not how do we keep the United States safe and secure. It is what advances our interest in those nations, what gives us more power. It is drunk on power and greed. That is what it is.
Do you think people, though, equate power to security? I mean, is there an element of that where, your military power, political and social power and influence, does that breed security for us here at home?
Certainly grand displays, that is a strategy, peace through strength. And I don't disagree with that. You don't weaken it, although we are weakened. We have 60,000 less. We're missing the targets of our recruiting.
Yeah.
And so we're not even hitting minimum targets. But we also have gone very soft. We have an over-reliance on technology. Some of our technology is not as advanced as it should be, actually. And also, our military right now, because of weak commanders-in-chief, they are very limited in even their scope. They need to think more like entrepreneurs. Terrorists are entrepreneurs applying it the wrong way. We can put something in against terrorists, and I forget the movie, but there's a movie where in some of our Middle East special ops where we could only get in to recover some hostages. We had to literally go in on horses and donkeys to get there. All of the tanks, all of our sophisticated aircraft, nothing could even track through those mountains. And we had to go in on a horseback. Special ops teams just sitting here going like this. And we're thinking in 2021, in 2020, in 2015, is it seriously? This is what we're reduced to militarily? It's because we don't understand all the ways to fight. Yeah. We only know kind of the brute strength. And I think we need to get smarter about how we fight. China is brilliant at that. That's what they've done to other countries. They didn't send armies to other countries. They sent money to other countries and enslaved them.
Well, yeah, we talked about that last night where Africa seems like it's been bought and paid for by the Chinese government. What's your opinion on that?
Well, it's bought and it'll never be paid for. And that's what's kept them enslaved.
But is that the idea?
That's the idea. And that's how they, because what they really want is the control. And so now they own, numerous ports, which is a threat to all of Africa's national security. It blocked us. We are losing Africa. Africa is the last greatest economic frontier on earth, and the United States should have such a high interest in the United States. We gave birth to several of the countries, and South Sudan being the world's newest country in 2011, we gave birth to them. We gave birth to Liberia. Their flag even looks like the United States flag. Like everything about them was the child of the United States. And we have just abandoned and forgotten. We have zero interest in Africa at all from a federal political standard right now.
But why? It literally is. I mean, you got billionaires going over there. You got the CEO of Twitter back in the day. What was his name?
Huge mining.
Jack Dorsey.
Yeah.
I mean, you got all these billionaires going over there and investing in companies. And why doesn't the U.S. government?
And 70% of the world's youth will reside on the African continent by 2030. 70%. By 2030. That is a super majority on one continent. That means the music that your kids listen to and your grandkids listen to, the fashion, the styles, everything is going to be fashioned by that generation in Africa because it's the world's youth in one place.
Is it a birth rate thing, or are you saying people are going to move there?
Yeah, it's a birth rate.
Well, look at our birth rate's going way down.
Yeah, there's already been a birth rate decline, and so the population will peak over 9 billion, probably start declining. By the way, we have this whole depopulation is of the enemy because we have enough resources to feed everyone on the planet. We have enough resources in the ocean right now of the periodic elements that we know on the periodic table. There's enough in the ground to have literally 10 times the current population on Earth, have 80 plus billion people with what we currently know. Wow. But all those other people bring new inventions. Someone discovers new metals. They discover new ways of doing things and longevity. So we have what we need. This scarcity in anything is a man-made idea to control.
Well, I feel like a lot of times it's like, oh, it's scarce, the overpopulation. Oh, by the way, we're going to tax you more.
Right.
And that seems to be the answer to everything, is just tax more. It's like, well, okay, are you going to fix it with that? Or is it just a slap on the wrist?
Right.
Do you think if you do become president that you'll be in a place to where, are you going to reduce taxes? Are you going to increase taxes? What are you going to do?
I love how we're going to fix the economy. And specifically the taxation, which has only gotten more burdensome over the years. I'm going to go with a tiered flat tax system. The reason for
First off, hallelujahs.
The reason for a tiered flat tax, what I'm looking to do is by having all income for joint married couples pay nothing on the first. No one pays anything on the first $60,000 in income, and the reason is that money is going to go back into the economy. So I want tiered because I don't want you paying tax on, you make $5,000 this year. I don't want you paying tax on that. I want you spending it and you need it for sustenance and things like that. The other thing that is a byproduct of that is no one on Social Security will be taxed. We tax Social Security now. I didn't even know that.
I heard that. And I was like, what?
That makes no sense. I paid it already off of taxable income. And then you're going to tax me again on my Social Security.
And it's a limited income. What are they doing?
Yes,
Some people, that's their only income.
And it's grandma and grandpa. You're hurting the most vulnerable in society who really kept this country growing for decades. So you're rewarding and incentivizing the wrong behavior. I want to eliminate the tax burden on our seniors. And by the way, that's how I preserve Medicare and Social Security, is through having people graduate with a bachelor's degree. In 18, I had 12 more years of productivity per worker in the United States.
Taxable income.
It's fully funded at that point. And so people think that the only solution is at some point cut it off. At some point it's going to be over. I'm telling you, it does not have to be that way. But we need smarter people running government and smarter people in government.
So one of the things I want to do is, it's got to be simpler. Our tax system is so confusing. The amount that I pay my accountants is outrageous at the end of the year. I'm so confused by what laws. Am I breaking a law? Am I doing it correct?
That's intentional, right?
And
I know.
You don't find out until afterwards.
Exactly. The biggest lobbyist for keeping it complicated is Quicken, who owns QuickBooks, and they do what's the tax service they provide? TurboTax.
TurboTax, right?
And it's like
Or
they're spending
QuickBooks,
TurboTax, but like at the end of the year, they're spending millions to keep it complicated.
Right.
And it's just like, excuse me?
So we have to use the service. It should be done on a postcard and take you 5 minutes every year.
Other countries,
but that's what
that.
the tiered flat tax. Yeah, that's exactly what our program does. And the reason people they like the confusion so they can weaponize it. In fact, a test was done where they gave the IRS, they gave the same tax return to 30 different IRS agents, and they all came back with different scenarios. If some overpaid, some said they underpaid, every single one came up with a different. And that's because there's more. The tax code is 10 times the size of the Holy Bible. Even God himself did not have to give for the whole universe and for all of mankind how to live, and a history book and a science book all in one. And it's still, a tenth of the size of the IRS.
Well, and then they're also scaring people by how many agents they're going to get. For some reason, they're ordering arms specifically for the IRS. What's your opinion on that, and would you stop that?
Well, of course. And once again, the IRS would 95% of the IRS would not be necessary, because in a tiered flat tax, a lot of it's going to be electronic, is how people file even, and how they pay. And so a lot of it's not necessary whenever it's simple. And so that's the best way to solve that problem. Here's the thing, though. When it comes to what they are doing in taxing companies and in taxing, the death tax, and they tax on everything, and it is egregious. A tiered flat tax eliminates all of that. It eliminates the capital gains tax. So it incentivizes you to now make more. There are some things, though, that create a better life for everyone. It incentivizes you. If you've got a company that does $100 million cash this year, and you can take $100 million as a personal paycheck if you want to, it incentivizes you to only take maybe $2 million, only take out what you need and invest the rest. So the personal tax system does do that. Most people would prefer that anyway. But it keeps the money in the business. You're not incentivized or hurt by taking it out personally.
But also, if you invest in the business, you're buying trucks, you're hiring people, which is producing income for state, towns, municipalities.
Yeah, it's all a system. And if you fix the right one or two cogs in every system, it has a chain reaction and it automatically fixes so many different things in society.
I could talk about this for literally hours. So let's go to a few more points.
Yeah.
And then one being our border, our immigration, man. Please, what's your opinion on that?
My opinion, first of all, there's a difference when we're talking about illegal immigrants. There is a big difference, in my opinion, between those who came in on a lawfully issued visa and then it stayed after it expired, and those that are storming our southern border. There's a big difference between illegal immigrants in the United States, and no one is making any distinction between these two groups of people. But my personal observation and what we have seen is those that have come in illegally they came in legally with a lawfully issued visa, but they stayed, it expired. Now they're here as an illegal immigrant. They, generally speaking, they have a different set of values and character and motivation for being in the United States. They have families here. They are, they went to the same schools that my daughter did, and they're ingrained in everyone's life. And you'd probably be surprised at some of the people who are here that have an unexpired visa. But then you have what's happening at the border, which is a completely different problem. It is planned. They are being led here, and they are being incentivized to be here. It's not the same. Nothing about them are the same as the ones who came in with the visa. And they are bringing fentanyl. They are bringing other things. And you know who's facilitating it? The major NGOs at behest of the government, our government.
Are they wanting him to come here so they have more votes in the election, or are they wanting him to come here to destabilize the economy? What is right? Why do you think that
there's multiple benefits? The vote is a people say that, and it eventually becomes that, but most of them can't vote. Even now. But they do have a voice. The biggest thing is so that they can destabilize the United States of America. And my goodness, look around. It is working. It is working. 2.5 million this year alone, one of the highest years. We have over 50 million illegal immigrants in the United States today. Wow. That is now larger than any state in the United States.
Wow.
I'm telling you, and they don't have the same love for America because they didn't come in. The ones that are storming and invading through our southern border are being incentivized and led. They weren't here in search of a better life. They were here because we wanted, this destabilization, and they are doing a very good job of it.
Are you worried at all that it's like fighting age men?
That's what I'm alluding to whenever I say they were incentivized and they were being led. It was very specific. They were targeted. They were recruited.
Yeah, because it's just like when you look out and it's not. They talk about the families. There are families that come across the border, but when you see videos of people coming across, I'm like, man, that's a lot of fighting age men coming across. Now, are they coming to work? Or is it more sinister? I think a lot of people, when they see that many people coming across the border, it's like, ooh, it's starting to...
We don't even have to tell these people, the ones storming the border, we don't even have to tell them what to do when they get here. We already know what they'll do because it's the only life they know. Most of the countries that we're bringing them in from, violence is the way of life. Even in the old days of South Sudan and other warring states, the Middle East, for example, parts of there, they have children just to hope to have a boy so that you will fight for your tribe. And if you live past 25 years old, you're a disgrace because you clearly didn't fight hard enough for us. Wow. And so we only win when there's more of us than there are of them. And so by bringing, this population here, they are destroying and attacking the family unit in America. They are destroying the fabric of America. And that fabric is a moral and an ethical and a foundation of family. And that is what none of the by and large, the ones that are being led across the southern border do not value family. They're not coming here in search of a better life. They don't want to integrate into American society. They're not going to pledge allegiance to the flag and sing the Star-Spangled Banner. They are here to have to wreak havoc because we have so much more freedom than wherever they came from. They would be beheaded wherever they came from for a fraction of what you can commit here, and we'll slap you on the wrist.
And it's not just people from like Mexico or like South America. It's people coming from China through that way. Someone coming from Africa, Afghanistan. Like, it's amazing. I saw a video on YouTube of a YouTuber down by the border, and there are thousands and thousands of IDs right before they come across the border. They would toss them so no one had any way of identifying.
Like passports?
Passport, IDs, any type of, and you could see this person's from China. This person's from, Brazil. This person's from, and it's just again and again. And the patrol guy was like, they come here through this area. This is where they know to toss their IDs. Then they come across and say, I'm a refugee, or I'm so-and-so, and no one has any way of verifying it.
Right.
So they could be criminals. They could be, they could be someone just looking for a better life. And I don't blame them. But
and you and I have talked for a long time about how, and our families, how like, one day we'd want to move to Texas. Yeah. It seemed like a great place to go. Arizona, the American Southwest. I think we've like second guessed that lately. With such a porous border, and the security concerns that come from that. I mean, Texas, there's a lot of promise, I think, for conservative Americans in a place like Texas, but they have a very serious problem that is not necessarily. It's not their problem, but it is very much their problem to deal with.
That's the federal government.
Just like what's happening in Chicago and New York. It wasn't their problem. It's becoming their problems whenever they're starting to be there.
But I think a lot of people are starting to ask the question, okay, federal government, that's your job to protect the borders. If you're not doing that, why am I paying you so much in taxes? Yeah. And you got like common people starting to ask that question.
And you can't talk to Border Patrol either. Like I don't think it's legal for Border Patrol without, it happens. There's anonymity and they'll secretly talk to the press, but I feel like that's a concern too. I feel like that's a problem. I don't know why you can't do that.
Here's the solution. The solution is to fix the legal system so that, but seal the southern border, which I would do that with the U.S. military before I do it with a wall. I would do it by sending, our generals would have to give me, we'd look at different plans and probably different in different parts. But, all of it is what is going to be necessary and whatever it takes, but you have to seal that. But I don't want to seal that and keep a broken legal system. We have to fix the legal immigration system. And then we have to do something with the illegal immigrants that are already here. And what I've done is a 7-year path to citizenship that if you pay your taxes, if you don't have any criminal history, you don't have any, obviously if you violate any of those things, you're deported. But most of them that came in or overstayed a visa or something, that's not the situation. They would already be American citizens. They already, for all intents and purposes, are in terms of contributing to society and starting jobs, and because they've even had to be more entrepreneurial than any American because they didn't have the documents to go get a normal job. So they've had to be entrepreneurial. And so I want to help make them citizens. But I want to fix the legal immigration so that we turn your applications around in 12 months, not taking $20,000, $30,000, high-priced attorneys and these middlemen. It should be a relationship between the immigrant and the United States government. You shouldn't have to have all these attorneys that are charging exorbitant fees and taking 10 to 15 years for you to be able to do it the right way. No wonder you're coming in the southern border.
Is that what it takes too now? Like it's 10 or 15 years?
Generally speaking, yes.
That's crazy.
Because you're in a pipeline. We'll get to you when we get to you, if we get to you. And every day
you can't blame them for wanting to come here. Though.
You can't.
No, you can't. My wife's family came from Mexico, and so they understand it most. I have 3 last kind of questions, and we got to wrap it up soon. We're taking up too much of his time. Go ahead.
Can I ask one last question?
Yeah, go for it.
I'm curious what you make of Donald Trump. He's the leading Republican candidate. Right. I find myself noticing anyway some similarities in background in that you both have experience in real estate, both come from success in business. But what do you make of him as the past president and the leading candidate right now?
Well, the Donald Trump of 2023 is not the Donald Trump of 2016. He is a different man. He is obviously for a lot of reasons he's been attacked, and he's not the same man. He's bitter. You can hear it in just about any speech and every day on social media. But the difference, he had a lot of good policies. A lot of good things, let me say it this way, happened while he was president. With the Supreme Court, with the economy, except the debt. That was a disaster. But in a number of, that's similar to what his belief was in business, that debt is how you create wealth. And so, but it's different when it's a nation. Mm-hmm. So we have similarities on policy in that sense. And also probably in leadership. Where we differ is what I stand for, who I am as a man, hopefully my character as a man. And what I mean by that is that my focus as president of the United States would be to be the best leader, because I believe I'm going to answer to God, back to the beginning of our conversation, for how I lead. He said in the Old Testament that Jews still study to this day, and Christians believe that of every king of Israel, it was said that they did that which was right in the sight of God, or they did that which was evil in the sight of God. So I believe I'm going to give an account for how I govern as president, which should help a lot of people, simmer down on any concerns, because they're like, man, he's going to be answering somebody a whole lot, more powerful than us over this. And if I'm not afraid of them, I am afraid of him. I have a fear of God, and I want to do what's right. But the difference is, and I don't question Donald Trump's love of God. I don't question his love for America. What I do know is that he loves Donald Trump more than God or America. And so in that situation, he puts himself first before he puts the country first. I think even his mere candidacy is putting himself first over the country. It was a stay out of jail card so that he could claim election interference. And by the way, I said that last December, actually, of 2022. I was saying he's only running. When he filed in November, I said that, and everyone was like, don't, it's way too early. Why would you do this? But it was all the strategy for himself, not for what's best for the country. So while I think he was a good president and his policies by and large and the things that happened while he was president, he's not the president for now. I would love to actually have him as an advisor. I want counsel around me, people who've been there, done that, but without, I speak differently than him. I don't want people to have to worry about flipping the channel because they don't want their young ears, their little children they're worried about what's going to fly out of my mouth. Which they do with him on TV. And are we going to be talking about porn stars today? Or are we going to be talking about, hush money? Or are we talking about, what kind of profanity is coming out? We have to get past the shock factor of this. The presidency is not supposed to be a reality TV show. Mm-hmm.
But he was a reality TV show.
Right, which is that's been a lot of his professional life.
So if we're talking about other candidates, what about DeSantis?
DeSantis, I think, is good at policy. He was a good governor, but as it relates to the presidential race, he's very inauthentic. And I remember even when he was running for governor, a lot of people saying, "Well, I'd vote for Casey, but I guess I have to vote for Ron," because she was always more eloquent, on the campaign trail and a little bit more natural. But it was really sad whenever he got in. I knew that the media was doing everything they could to convince him to go in, with made up polls and, it'll be so close. It'll be Trump and DeSantis match up. And a month after he's in, he's tanking, and he just kept tanking, and now he's in single digits. And I mean, that's a tough fall.
Well, the boots also kind of hurt that.
Like I said, inauthentic. Everything about him, they had to manufacture. So they sculpted his persona. They sculpted what his mannerisms. They tried to sculpt. Okay, you're once again, he can't even accept himself with his height. So right, you're going to try to do different things. They talk about hair coloring, and people can color hair. That's fine. They can add inches on their boots, to be taller. But there is a general. Do you like yourself, Ron? Yeah. Are you okay with yourself? Because if you're always living, and by the way, we need a president that doesn't alienate half the country. Some of his policies, really, people had a hard time with. The next president better be proficient in artificial intelligence and foreign policy and international diplomacy. He had none of them. They had to send him on a whirlwind tour to try to meet a couple presidents so that it looked like he had at least met one president in his lifetime. And then had one-on-one and had meetings. But everything about it was, once again, photo ops, and it was all props. It was inauthentic. And I think everyone sees it. That's why he's gone from 30, 40% to 9%.
Wow. Do you have any opinions on the rest of them, like Vivek or?
Yeah, man, he can talk the paint off the wall. I love my mother-in-law, but he talks more than my mother-in-law. Wow. And that's really saying something. And I love her to death. But I'm telling you, I think he would be. I said a year ago or earlier this year that he'd make a great press secretary for me. But and I do think that that's his skill set. I think he belongs in media. I think he'd be a great media pundit. I think he's a social media influencer kind of thought leader. But the problem is, once again, when everything that comes out of your mouth is so perfectly curated to what has been said that we want to hear, all the red alarms and flags start going off, like you're saying it too good. And so now what his handlers have said is you have to make it look like you're saying what we don't want to hear, but it's still what we want to hear. So just about anything you watch, he'll be like, now I know this isn't what you want to hear. But I know it's not what you hear, but I'm going to tell you because you need to hear it anyway. And then he'll say the very thing that you wanted to hear. So everything is, once again, goes back to optics. So and he doesn't have much of a history in politics. He was very disinterested in it. And he certainly has zero international affairs experience. Once again, I'm glad that he's running for president. I'm glad that, the youth are starting to be engaged in the political process. I don't care that he was sleeping, for all the other elections. I'm glad he's engaged now. Because I do think we need youth engaged in politics, and we need to stop electing people that, the White House was never meant to be a geriatric, community retirement home.
Do you believe in like age limits?
Yeah. Yes. I believe in term limits, and I believe in age limits. There's a minimum age, and it used to not be an issue. But once again, it's a reflection of it used to be a reflection of the population, but what's changed in the last decade, it is now a reflection of the party corruption.
Yeah.
Deeply entrenched.
Deeply entrenched. Your first day of announcing that you were going to be running for president, you had a little bit of a controversy right off the bat, and it kind of went viral. Can you basically, for those who don't know, your wife passed out in the middle of your speech.
In the middle of my announcement?
Pregnant wife.
Pregnant wife.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you kind of explain that? Because people seem to run with that. So kind of,
and their real issue was that it took me 5 seconds to get to her. Ironically, we're in the very hall, where I announced my presidency, in the rotunda floor below. And, there's at least 6 to 8 feet. She was standing 6 to 8 feet behind me, 5 months pregnant. Our doctors had checked her out 2 days before, her doctors, and everything was fine, cleared her for everything. They were watching, and she had been going back and forth, around the Capitol that day. We had monitored all the meals, calories, all of her input. So we thought we were just right on top of everything. And then for the first time, in our life together, she passed out. And it was, because, the excitement of the day, it was the health. Also, 2 days later on one of her pregnancy apps, it said that it's very natural for pregnant women at the 5-month mark to faint. And she's like, now you tell me. But we were taking all the precautions. The bottom line, she was 6 to 8 feet behind me. And so I did not see. And there was a commotion going on my entire announcement, state troopers walking around and so forth. So I did not see any more commotion than what I'd already been hearing. It was when I saw my father start to move over here that I thought, well, that's interesting. And then I felt some other peripheral things happen. And even then, I didn't want to turn fully. I kind of turned halfway so that I could get more of a peripheral, but I could look back, and keep going if it was nothing. Because we are used to distracted leadership in this country. Every little thing that happens, everyone expects the president to respond like that. What is your opinion? Make a statement, make a comment. We're used to reactionary leaders. So whenever I don't react, instead I pause, I assess, I act. That's what I did, and people were surprised by that. Everyone that was here was like, that was handled really well. But the flip side is, can you imagine a president that every shiny object and every little thing that flies by, you're like, oh, shiny object. Oh, look, you over here. I'm tired of distracted leadership running this country.
Mm-hmm. Well, so there's like marble on every surface here in this state capitol. So it's not a soft, cushy fall. Was she okay?
Yes. And fortunately, one of my dear friends who was standing with us was able to catch her and keep her from going all the way down.
Oh, good.
And my wife was
legs?
so graceful. No, she's been in pageants, beauty pageants. She's won pageants, international titles, national titles. She's won numerous titles.
Oh, now you're just bragging.
Yeah, nice.
Oh, I'm proud of my wife.
That's basically saying she's
I am
pretty.
proud of her.
Yeah.
She's had 6 billboards in Times Square. Cover of Supermodels Unlimited. I married up. I am a very, very blessed man. Wow. And I love her dearly. But it was being pregnant. It was walking this big capitol a lot that morning. It was the excitement, the anticipation. My husband is literally about to announce that he's running for president of the United States.
They also keep it warm
awesome
in here, too.
responsibility.
Yeah, it's so hot. People don't know this, but I'm sweating right now.
Yeah, I
You
can't
got
blame her. Well, I'm glad she was okay.
Yeah.
And that was what was matter. By the way, there was over a 5-minute break. I literally stopped mid-speech when I went over to her. I was the one that actually helped her back up. And while the medical staff were attending to her, and they did a great job, I was praying, Lord, is this thing over before it started? Literally, if my wife can't handle it, she's first. So if I need to just say, if there's an announcement to be made, we'll make it later. I was trying to decide, when I go back to the podium, do I end this or do I keep going? And when she said that she was fine, and we were able to get her a chair, and they got her, the sugar in her and some things, she was fine and ready to go. I did go back and picked up right where I left off, and we finished. And I'm so glad we did.
Yeah, man, it's funny how they latch on to that one thing right off the bat, and people just have a tendency of overlooking the policies right off the bat. And they're just like, well, look at this. His wife passed out. It's just that's the media, man. Like I told you last night, anytime I've ever done anything with the media, they get my name wrong. And it's like, bro, I just talked to you. My name's Jacob. And it's
okay. Yeah. It's okay because I was actually glad that they cared, about the life of an unborn.
Good point.
So I kind of started seeing it from a different perspective. I was glad that you're concerned about my pregnant wife too. This is interesting.
Yeah.
And your son is how old now?
5 months, almost 6 months. Yeah. He was born on July 4th on Independence Day.
Wow.
2023.
So my son's been wanting me he's like, Dad, I want another kid. I'm like, yeah. He's like, he wants to name it Gideon America Colgan. And I'm like, he thinks that if we have another girl, it's going to be Gabriel, America. He wants America. So you should have named your kid America. It's July 4th. Last goofy question from me. If you become president, are you going to reveal the fact, are there aliens? Are there not? What's up with Area 51, and why is the government talking about freaking aliens?
And our hoverboards related.
Hoverboards related.
Where do you think I got the idea? No, I'm just kidding. I didn't invent it.
Yeah.
Aliens. I'm sure there will be plenty of things that I can't talk about with it all.
Wait, what are you talking about?
But,
hold up a second.
There is a real conversation to be had of what can Americans. Everyone wants the truth. Mm-hmm. If we knew the truth, many people would shut down about everything. If we had the truth, because things are so corrupt and so bad, and our very lives are held on by such a weak, thin thread. And yet we all have the confidence. We need everybody to keep going to work tomorrow. We need them to keep showing up. We need them to stay in action. A lot of what I think, it's heavy stuff. A lot of it's spiritual warfare. When you start to see this universe and you see the cosmos and you see the galaxies, and in which we don't even know everything in our own galaxy, not even close, and then you realize there's billions of galaxies, you start realizing how great and how big and God is and how small we are. Mm-hmm. and yet we think we're the be all end all. I'm telling you, the more of a glimpse you have of the world, the light and galaxies and the universe and space and the oceans and how things work, you really start to feel insignificant, and nobody wants to feel insignificant, although it is a good thing because it shows your need of a savior. That's the whole reason everything is designed that way, because you have the whole inside of all of us that's yearning for him. And so, yes, I do want people to know more the truth about that. I'm less concerned. Everyone knows the origins of COVID and all. I mean, we can stop with the games, like we don't know where stuff's coming from. There are some things where I want people to know the truth. I want people to know the truth about the corruption of the United States government. I want them to know exactly who was involved in some of the greatest cover-ups, because it's not reducing institutional trust by doing that. It is gaining trust back in a government of we the people.
So he's not saying he won't tell us. If you get
You're
elected
saying
president,
there's a chance.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. If you get elected president, I'm going to call you, like, bro, Area 51, 5 o'clock.
I want the tour.
I can tell you, if you even know the name Area 51, nothing of too much importance is there.
When people know where it's at. So
it's like when we transport nuclear weapons, and we have the big armaments and we have all of the motorcades. We're probably carrying, a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts or something.
Yeah. They wouldn't tell us exactly.
No, it's called security through antiquity.
Oh,
back to the cybersecurity. Yeah.
Okay.
So if you become president, can I please be the ambassador to France? Nice house. I've seen it.
I think what I could commit to is a game of pool in the White House.
Deal.
I think we could go with something like that.
I'm in.
Yeah. I'll take that.
If I'm invited to that.
Deal.
Okay.
Listen, man, I want you to know I appreciate your time. You're a busy man, entrepreneur, and a guy running for president, and we're just two goofballs from YouTube. So I just want you to know thank you, and I wish you the best of luck. I know you got something going on in Ohio here in a few weeks. So just good luck.
We got Iowa January 15th, and
Iowa,
we got events even tonight. I'm very thankful. I'm thankful for our team. I'm thankful for the people that have rallied around us and support. They believe, not because they're looking at polls, but because they believe in the message. They believe in me, and that's an awesome responsibility. Not because they don't believe in a media depiction of me, because the media has not made a depiction of me. They tried to keep me out. So what they've just gotten to know me. And so I'm thankful for people like you that are seeking, truth, and also encouraging people to, overcome obstacles, because that is what made America great. I mean, when I travel the world, I'm traveling on planes that we gave the world. I'm at these beautiful airports around the world. We gave that to them. The vehicles that they're transporting our luggage on, we gave it to them. Their way of life, the roads, the automobiles, so many different things. We have elevated life around the world because of American ingenuity and creativity. And I want a 22nd century America that is focused on that.
Wow. Where can people donate, contact?
Yeah, RollanRoberts.com, ROLLAN Roberts.com. Find us on social. But I really enjoy engaging, with our audience.
We'll make sure all your links and stuff are in the description.
Yeah.
Or you can go find them at a Longhorn Steakhouse occasionally in West Virginia.
That's where we went last night.
Yeah.
I noticed some people recognize you while we were there.
Yeah.
And I was just like, what's going on? Why are these people looking? Oh, it's him. Oh, okay. But
yeah. I remember the first time I was in a Walmart. We were doing grocery shopping with my wife, and someone came up to me, and they were all excited, and it was big. It freaked my wife out. But they came up and were, Rollan Roberts, and and I wasn't too sure, like, friend or foe here, not sure at this point. And he was like, no. He said, I follow you on Facebook. And he said, I recognized your hair. And then I was in Dallas, Texas last week. And I got to the hotel. I had a day full of campaigning, just came back from an event. And I walked into the hotel lobby, and there were people who follow me on Facebook in Dallas, Texas, that were just randomly there. And she said, I've shared some of your quotes, because I always said the strength of the family is the strength of the nation. And she said, I just loved that, talking about family. And so she said, I've shared your quotes and I can't believe you're here. And, so we got a picture and they're like, can I buy you a drink? I said, I don't drink. I said, well, I drink a lot. It's just all water or unsweet tea, And so I said, yeah. So I got a coffee and it's wonderful. America as a whole, when you're on a plane, when you're at the stores, you don't know if they're Republican or Democrat by and large. You're just interacting and it's not an issue. It's just the two parties that are separating us, dividing us, creating the chaos and the confusion. America, let's rise above this. We're better than that. We are on a daily basis. Don't let politics and the division accomplish what they're trying to do. Just focus on a better United States of America, a government of we the people, by the people, and for the people, and we will be a better nation.
Agreed. Look, I even wore a collar today. This is cool. We're in a Capitol. We're talking to a U.S. presidential candidate. This has been a fun day, man. Rollan, thank you.
Thank you.
I hope we appreciate you.
We appreciate you as well. Thank you.
And if you're ever in Illinois, give us a call.
We'll do.
Well, we won't podcast in a big room like this. We'll podcast in a studio.
Yeah.
All right, man. Well, we're out.